Going live and realizing that my hair is crazy. All right, so for today, our live stream, whether I get a person or not in here, is going to be what questions should you ask your wedding photographer from a 20 plus year photographer? Now, my niche is not wedding photography, but I would love to just go over the things that I would ask somebody if I were to be hiring a wedding photographer, even though I've been married for, over a decade. So, and these are just questions that I found it interesting that ChatGPT could come up with, and I just picked and choose 10. I didn't really go over them. I'm anyway, here we go. So, can we see a full gallery of a wedding instead of just something off of Instagram? And what that means in short terms is everybody has an Instagram portfolio, or they have some kind of special portfolio on their website where they'll show you like the best of the best of the best of the best. And sometimes you don't want to rely on that as an entire gallery of body of work for somebody. And so whenever I say ask for 2 or 3 full galleries, most of the time you will have an unprivate wedding. And I say that because some weddings are private and people don't want them to be shared, but they'll have unprivate weddings where you could just send them a full gallery of the, 100 to 1,500 images that you could look through to see the encompassing network of their total shoot that they did for a wedding from start to finish. Maybe if you were seeing just one final shot of them going through the sparklers and it looked amazing, and you're like, I want that wedding photographer. But then all of a sudden the rest of the shoot is like dark and horrible and unintentionally blurry that it doesn't make sense, but they still delivered it. Like things like that, maybe that's not for you. And you want somebody that can use Flash and have special techniques or certain types of style that mesh well with you. And so you want to see the entire gallery of work instead of just the 4 or 5 images, because honestly, we take probably, I always chalk it up to at least 150 to 200 pictures per hour at events and weddings most of the time for me. Now, that's not everyone. And if you hire a film photographer, then completely different standards. But for me, that's my range. And so I would definitely expect at least 1,500 to 2,000 images for most weddings. And that normally breaks down to like, 750 to 1,500 deliverables that are fully edited, ready for posting anytime you would want them to be. And so even though wedding photography is not my niche, that is something that I would look for in a wedding photographer as far as galleries go. And then, of course, how do you handle low light or dark reception venues? So this is a specific lighting question that you may not know the answer to, but it's something you should be able to ask your wedding photographer. All venues are different, and you need to set expectations for what they are going to be getting into, whether it is, allowing them to go to the venue and scoping it out, or allowing them to come to the rehearsal dinner or anything like that, and letting them know like this is about what the lighting is going to be, either the day before, an hour before, something. So why it matters to photographers is if you're going to turn all of the lights off and all you're going to have is one set of string lights that are, icicle lights, then that's going to be an extremely dark scene, and they're going to either have to deliver very dark, noisy images to you, or they're going to have to provide some kind of lighting that's going to light things up. And if you, as the bride, wedding planner, mother-in-law, groom, don't want extra lights on your dance floor or anything like that, then that's something you need to talk to your wedding photographer about and go over like what the options are. Whether that is adding more lighting to the venue, having some kind of understanding that there's going to be flashes during your dancing and or things like that. So that is a good question that you should ask them, because if they're starting out and they don't have any kind of lighting or flash equipment, maybe you should switch to a different photographer. Maybe that's not the one for you and you need a more advanced photographer with more equipment. Or you should hire another photographer for that portion of it. And that's fully understandable. We would understand that. The only reason that they wouldn't understand that is if they say want to be in control and want to photograph the entire wedding all the way through, then say, okay, that's fine. I am going to hire a secondary wedding photographer that is more comfortable in low light situations, that can provide me with multiple flashes all the way around so everything is lit beautifully and they can deliver in the style that I want. Something like that, nobody should argue with. And if they do, if they, cut them. That's not it. That's not the ones for you. Number 3, what is your backup plan in case something goes wrong? And there's a lot that can go wrong. So I read the other day in a group that I'm in that some family member got into a accident while the wedding photographer was going to the wedding. And so what do you do in that situation? It was a family member, it was a car accident, it was serious. So they weren't just gonna not go to the hospital just to make, a couple $1,000s on a wedding. So what's the backup plan for that? Make sure they may have a network of people that could step in that case. In this case, they did. There was a second shooter that was also photographing that wedding. And then maybe a compensation is in order. I know it's a tough time for the photographer because they're going through it. They just had an accident and they have family members in trouble, but there's contracts in place for these types of situations. On the other hand, there could be equipment failures. Make sure your photographer has at least 2 cameras just in case one fails. Also, I would say make sure they're shooting with 2 memory cards. That's something you could just request and ask for, and you can offer to pay for it. Like, hey, I know this is a request for me. I would like for you to shoot with dual memory cards in both slots in your camera and have one back up to the other in case one fails. As far as memory card cost, depends on the camera and the output that you're expecting. So in that case, in this request, I would say that you're going to be spending anywhere between $150 on up to $350 for a new memory card for that camera. Yes, that's how expensive our memory cards are. So just keep that in mind and use that as an alternative. Otherwise, if you see them and they say, oh, all I have is one camera and one lens, and you have an Uncle Mike who is going to be on the dance floor going crazy, and he may knock that camera out, and then Uncle John comes in and he steps on it, you're out of camera, and that's the end of the whole deal, and you're gone. So it's iPhones from there on out. So make sure your photographer has at least one backup camera. And this may not be the case for beginners. So if they don't, just, talk about scenarios beforehand and go from there. What is your approach to either posed, documentary, candid, or mix? So this is a question that it popped up and it made sense to me. It made sense to me because there's multiple different types of photographers that you could have come to your wedding and photograph it. So some will be fully planned out, prepped, and have staged photos for every single portion of your event and nothing is going to be real. It's all going to be planned out, down to when you're getting your makeup done and they have a planned set of shoots for when you're getting your makeup done. They'll lay the dress out, they'll set up props, they'll have a background chosen and where you're going to sit, and the makeup artist and all the things. And then, all the way leading up to the final exit and how they have the lighting set up, it's all planned out. And then on the other hand, you may want a full candid photographer where they are run and gun and they are just taking pictures of everything. And I want photos of every moment, and it doesn't matter. And then the mix is you could get a combination of the both. You can get a person that is fully planned out and ready to go, and then have a second shooter either hired by them or by you that is full candid, and all they get is you smiling and laughing at, a joke that somebody told, but it was not planned, and you want to capture that. So those are the two main things. There's a combination of different things here and there inside of that you could also do. But in general, I think that most people will want more of the candid style with a few posed things. So bring that up to your photographer and see what you guys can work out in the end. Most of the time, I tell all of my brides and grooms that I am like 90% fully just candid photos, and I'm going to have 2 cameras on each side. One's for wide, one's for long, and I may be standing on the other side of the room getting you laughing at your grandmother's joke, and you, your groom, and your bride and grandma are all laughing, having a great time, but it's just going to be whatever the situation is that I'm getting. It's not going to be a planned studio, perfectly lit situation at every moment. But I feel like, most people like that. And so it is something that you should go over. What kind of style you like? So this is a good question for finding out if they are a beginner or if it's their niche or if they're a full-time wedding photographer. How many weddings do you photograph per year? And so one thing I like to say is I'm not a wedding photographer. I am a documentary photographer when it comes to events and weddings, and I make that widely known to all of the brides and grooms that have ever tried to hire me, that I'm not photographing a wedding. I'm photographing moments, and I'm photographing just candid shots and moments in time that should last forever. So it doesn't matter if you're hiring me for a wedding, a ball, a quinceañera, anything like that. To me, it's 100% all the same, and you are just hiring me to capture and be spot on and know how to troubleshoot every scenario and go from there. And if I were to tell you I only take maybe one wedding every 4 years, but I photograph 80 events a year, then that might be something that your photographer would say. And then on the other hand, you would have the specialized wedding photographer, which they're going to be like, oh yeah, we photograph 295 weddings a year or 450 weddings a year. And you start trying to... And we're back. I'm using a professional quality camera. It has batteries. I now have it on a battery pack. These are the type of situations that you may run into as a wedding photographer that you need to ask your wedding photographer about. Do you have enough batteries for this 9-hour event? And if they say no, you definitely need to get on them. I have multiple batteries with multiple setups with multiple battery packs that I can definitely get in there, but I'm probably not going to photograph your wedding. All right. So we were on how many weddings do you photograph a year? And I was saying that in the case where I only photograph events, live moments, and I document whatever is in front of me, so I am a candid photographer. You could book me for your wedding, but I'm going to shoot it the same way I do most events. And in that situation, I'm going to capture some amazing moments. but I'm also a 20-year-long photographer. And in those moments, I'm going to be able to set up precious moments, and I'm going to be able to photograph rings, and I'm not going to not photograph it like a wedding. So I'm going to give you the absolute best possible scenario. And you should be hearing things like this from your wedding photographer. If they photograph, 300 weddings a year, they're experienced. They know exactly what to do and when to do it. They have a set, parameter of things that they do, whether it be, let's do the lighting for the makeup like this. Let's do the dress shot. And they have a checklist. We're photographing the family. Here's the breakdown of the family. Here's the checklist. We got every family member. They need to know all of these things. And that is the number one request whenever I get back from it. Did you take pictures of Aunt so-and-so during the family picture section? And then if you didn't have that checklist, give me that checklist. Nope, we didn't check that one off, so we did not get that photo. Things like that. So what is included in your package and what are the extra costs? So this could range incredibly wildly, but we need to know it, and we need to be able to expect an answer from your photographer. If they don't have an answer, this could be concerning. So what is the package cost of your wedding photography? And this is going to depend on your wedding. So if you are doing a courtyard, backyard, living room, 5 to 10 guest thing, expect the price to be a little bit lower than normal, but still you are capturing moments that you cannot replicate, go back in time, or do over. So expect a higher amount than normal. This is the one cost you do not want to skimp on. You're not going to remember what food you had. You're not going to remember what kind of flowers were there. Yes, you can save the dress. You can save a portion of the cake. You can save some of the flowers and the napkins and all that to remember it. But it's very rare that you go back into that storage unit and pull out something from your wedding to admire it. But you could very easily go to the thumb drive or Dropbox, Google Drive, anything like that, and just look at your wedding all over again from start to finish and have all the great memories all over again. And so with that being said, each wedding is going to cost different amounts, and I can't even imagine starting on telling you how much your wedding should cost. But just know that the higher end wedding, the higher end cost. And then if you have multiple shooters, then the cost will go up. If there's a travel fee, then the price should go up. If your wedding venue is in one part of town or the ceremony is in one part of town and then the venue is in another part of town, then you need to take that into consideration. If you're getting ready at a hotel and then you go to the ceremony and then you go to the venue, all of these things are extra costs that should be included. We talked about earlier the memory card thing. If you want them to shoot dual memory card just in case, then that should be a cost that'd be added in. Make sure you feed your photographer. They're going to be with you for 8 to 10 hours. They need to eat and drink things. Do not get mad at them for eating and drinking things. You need to set boundaries, but not have the expectations that they are superhuman. It's something that we see often in the groups where they are not included in the food portion of it, and you don't want a photographer to be taking pictures while everyone's eating anyway, and so they're not going to have very much to do. You should feed them. And if they have a second shooter, you should feed that second shooter. And if you are worried about the extra, $25 to $45 per plate that you're wasting on a photographer to eat, then you should not be having that style of wedding. Downgrade if it's a money issue. So I know there's situations out there where it could get very expensive. Then in that case, offer to have food brought to them. Order Chick-fil-A or pizza or have a burger, whatever they choose for their meal, and have some fast food delivered through DoorDash. It doesn't have to be the most extravagant fancy meal in the world for you to feed your photographer. in the case of like having a ceremony at a 5-star restaurant or something, do it within reason. Talk to your photographer about it and have it set up ahead of time, so you both understand. And also ask questions. So if you want a second shooter or a third shooter or a fourth shooter, if you want to hire 2 different wedding photographers for the same event, just let them know and talk to them. It's just questions. So you're not going to offend anybody by asking questions or letting them know your expectations or wants. Now, if you want more than 1 second shooter, maybe you want 3 or 4 to cover different areas of the venue while you're doing things, just let them know and they'll give you the cost and breakdown of each one. And I think it's always good to have at least 2 or 3 there at the venue in case something happens to one of them. So, I mean, what if one falls down the stairs and breaks their legs and they got to go to the emergency room while they were taking pictures of your dress? Are you down a photographer, or do you have 2 or 3 backups? If it's a small wedding, then, maybe you don't need that. Maybe there's no staircases anywhere. It's all things that are relative that you need to go over with your photographer on the day when you're trying to book them. All right. Question 8. Nope, that was question 8. 9. How long will it be to receive your full gallery delivered, fully edited, ready to go, all of these things? And this is going to be also a wide range topic, because if you only take, 100 pictures of your wedding, or if you took 10,000 pictures at your wedding, then the editing time is going to be different. For me, knowing other people and the industry, I want to say the industry standard is going to be like 1 to 2 months. And I know that sounds like a long time. And to me, it sounds like a long time as well. I know how fast I can edit, but I can't say how fast anybody else can edit, and their lives are different. And if they are doing, 4 to 5 weddings a month, then it can get crazy if you're editing 50,000 photos in a month. So just give them time and set the reasonable expectation. So most of the time you should have a wedding contract in place, and just make sure it's in the contract how you're going to get it delivered and in time. And if it goes beyond time, set a penalty maybe. Like if you're 1 week late, then there's a cost occurrence to it or something like that. Now, can you collect on that? Yes, you're going to have a contract in place, but collecting from the photographer that has your wedding photos that they're holding hostage essentially is going to be difficult and an awkward situation. But in that time that they have your wedding photos, maybe you should have something set up ahead of time. Like, hey, can we have, 100 at a time, or as you finish them? We don't expect the whole gallery all at once. Just show us progress, communicate, things like that. You can always ask questions. It's always in the playbooks to just ask any question you want. If it's taken them 4 to 6 months to edit, 1,000 images, then something may have gone wrong on their end, and you need to definitely communicate to them. I hear this issue in the groups all the time, where they're taking forever. They don't communicate with me. This is something you need to set up ahead of time with your photographer, and maybe go over expectations as well. If they're not communicating with you going up to and into the wedding, then maybe you need to get a different photographer or something. If they're already being flaky, then maybe that's something you should talk to them about. But it's definitely an expectation for a wedding photographer to be able to deliver something on time and within reason. So have it set up in the contract and go from there. So question 10, if we had to book you for one reason alone, what would you say you are best at? And my thing with this is there's going to be wedding photographers that are extremely organized and in place, and they have their set routine that they do every single time. And you need organization, communication, and expectations met at all times to be inside a brighter groom's brain. And so, as a photographer, if I don't feel your needs, then maybe I'm not the one for you. If there's some kind of style difference or mix up in that area, then maybe that's, something y'all should have gone over in the beginning. So, what am I good at? If I were to have this question, I would say I'm best at trying to find a moment that you didn't expect that you're going to look back on later and think, oh my gosh, I remember that memory and it was the most amazing story they were telling. Or I think I'm really good at finding that situation that stands out in the end that you weren't thinking about and not expecting, and giving you more than what you were expecting in the end. Being able to spot a lighting scenario that doesn't look like anything to you, but when you receive the final result, you're like, this is that photo, and you're amazed at what I've delivered to you. Delivering high expectations or delivering the unexpected is always a case scenario for that. So these are the 10 questions that I would ask a wedding photographer. If they don't know how to answer any of those, then maybe you have an issue and maybe you should go over some things with other photographers. Choose different photographers. Have 2 or 3, have a sit down, just talk with them. They're all about questions and answers and things like that. So hope this answered some of your questions. If you have any kind of part 3s or 4s that you want me to go over, or questions that you need answered from a wedding photographer, if you wanted me to go in depth into pricing on how pricing could work for wedding photography, I could do that. I could go over troubleshooting situations where if you ran into a situation or are in a situation, I could answer it how I would answer it, not in the other photographer's footsteps, but how I think it should be handled. So let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next question and answering session.